The days after the ceremony felt different for everyone. But for Ryan, they felt heavy. At school, students were no longer talking about his big birthday party. They were not talking about the magician or the huge cake. They were talking about Daniel. They were talking about the park. Ryan sat quietly at his desk, listening to his classmates. Daniel is so kind. He didn't even get angry. I want to help at the park too. Each word felt like a small stone dropping into Ryan's chest. For the first time in his life, he did not feel important. That afternoon, Ryan walked home slowly. His large house looked the same. The tall gate stood strong. The garden was perfect. But something inside him did not feel right. He walked past the place where Daniel had once stood with the small gift in his hand. He remembered the look in Daniel's eyes that day. At that time, he had felt proud. Now he felt ashamed. That night, Ryan could not sleep. He kept thinking about the park, about the applause, about Daniel standing on the stage. He remembered the words Daniel had said. If that day didn't happen, none of this would have happened. Ryan stared at the ceiling. Was it possible that he had caused something good? Or had he simply been cruel? The next morning, Ryan made a quiet decision. He did not tell his parents. He did not tell his friends. He simply walked toward the park. When he arrived, Daniel was already there, fixing a small wooden table near the benches. Children were playing happily around him. Ryan stood at the entrance for a long moment. He felt nervous. He was not used to feeling nervous. Finally, he stepped inside. Some children noticed him and whispered, "That's the boy from the party." Ryan felt their eyes on him. He walked toward Daniel slowly. Daniel looked up and saw him. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Ryan swallowed hard. "I want to help," he said quietly. Daniel looked surprised. "Help?" he asked. Ryan nodded. "If you will let me." Daniel studied his face carefully. This time, there was no pride in Ryan's eyes, only honesty. Daniel handed him a paintbrush. "Then start there," he said, pointing to the old fence. Ryan took the brush. His expensive shoes became dusty. His clean shirt got a little stained with paint. But he did not stop. For the first time, he worked beside Daniel. Not as a rich boy, not as the host of a big party, but simply as another child. After a while, one of the younger kids ran up to Ryan. "Can you push me on the swing?" the little girl asked. Ryan hesitated for a second. Then he smiled softly. "Yes," he said. He gently pushed the swing. The little girl laughed loudly. That sound felt different from the laughter at his birthday party. Felt real. Daniel watched him quietly. Something had changed. Days passed, and Ryan kept coming back to the park. He helped fix the broken fence. He brought extra paint from his house. He even convinced his father to donate new swing chains and fresh soil for the flower beds. At first, people were surprised to see him there, but slowly they accepted him. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Ryan sat next to Daniel on the bench. "I didn't understand before," Ryan admitted softly. "Understand what?" Daniel asked. "That being rich doesn't make you important," Ryan said. "Doing something good does." Daniel smiled gently. "It's never too late to understand," he replied. Ryan looked at him. "Why didn't you shout at me that day?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell everyone what I did?" Daniel thought for a moment. "Because I didn't want to build something with anger," he said. "I wanted to build something with kindness." Those words stayed in Ryan's heart. From that day on, the park became more than just Daniel's project. It became a symbol that people can change, a symbol that mistakes can turn into lessons. The town noticed Ryan's effort too. They saw him working, sweating, laughing with other children. They saw him changing. One afternoon, the elderly woman sat near them and said quietly, "This park fixed more than broken wood." Daniel and Ryan looked at her. "It fixed hearts," she continued. Ryan lowered his head slightly, understanding her meaning. Daniel looked around at the children playing freely, without fear of rejection. He realized something important. The closed gate had once divided people, but the open park had brought them together. And now something even more powerful was about to happen. Because the story of the boy who was rejected and the boy who learned his lesson was about to reach beyond the town. And what happened next would surprise everyone once again. Gasps filled the air. Daniel's eyes widened. He could not believe what he just heard. Children jumped with excitement. Some shouted his name. The little girl who loved the blue swing ran forward and hugged him tightly. "You made this place happy," she said. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of something new, pride. At that moment, Daniel noticed someone standing near the back of the crowd. Ryan, the same boy who had closed the gate on him. Ryan was not smiling. He was not laughing. He was watching quietly, and his face showed something Daniel had never seen before: regret. After the ceremony, people came one by one to shake Daniel's hand. Some adults thanked him. Some children asked to take pictures with him. Daniel felt overwhelmed. His mother stood near the trees, watching everything with tears in her eyes. She remembered the day he walked home with the gift still in his hand. Now, that same boy stood proudly in the middle of the park. As the sun began to set, the crowd slowly left. The stage was removed. The ribbons fluttered in the wind. Daniel sat alone on the blue swing for a moment. He thought about everything that had happened. One closed gate had led him here. One painful moment had turned into something beautiful. He did not know that someone was slowly walking toward him. Ryan stopped a few steps away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy. Ryan looked at the ground. "I read the newspaper," he said quietly. Daniel waited. Ryan took a deep breath. "I didn't know," he continued. "I didn't know you could do something like this." Daniel did not answer. Ryan finally looked at him. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Those two words were simple, but they carried weight. Daniel felt a strange calm inside him. He remembered the laughter at the gate. He remembered the embarrassment. But he also remembered the first swing he painted, the first bench he fixed, the first child who smiled. Slowly, Daniel stood up. "It's okay," he said gently. Ryan looked surprised. "You're not angry?" he asked. Daniel shook his head. "I was hurt," he replied honestly. "But if that day didn't happen, none of this would have happened." Ryan looked around at the park filled with color and life. For the first time, he understood. And the whole town would soon understand something even bigger. Because this story was no longer about a party. It was about the power of one small heart that refused to stay broken. The morning after the newspaper story was printed, the entire town was talking about Daniel. At the bakery, people spoke about him while buying bread. At the tea shop, men discussed the park with serious faces. Even at school, students whispered his name. "Did you see the paper? He fixed the park by himself. I didn't know he could do that." Daniel walked to school like any other day. He carried his old school bag and kept his eyes down. He did not feel like a hero. He still felt like the same quiet boy. But something was different. When he entered the classroom, a few students looked at him with new eyes. Not with laughter, not with pity, but with respect. One boy even moved his chair and said, "You can sit here." Daniel felt strange. He was not used to this. During lunch break, more students gathered around him. "Is it true you fixed the whole park? Did you really do it alone?" Daniel answered simply, "I just started it. Others helped later." But deep inside, he remembered the first day, the broken swing, the closed gate, the heavy feeling in his chest. That same afternoon, something unexpected happened at the park. Daniel arrived with his toolbox, ready to work like always. But when he reached the entrance, he stopped. There were many cars parked outside, more than usual. He felt nervous. As he walked inside, he saw a small stage near the center of the park. Chairs were arranged in rows. Colorful ribbons were tied around the trees. Daniel's heart began to beat faster. "What is this?" he whispered. The elderly woman who had helped him smiled warmly. "Just wait," she said. Soon, the mayor of the town arrived. He was wearing a formal suit. Behind him stood the newspaper reporter and several town leaders. Children were sitting in front, whispering with excitement. Daniel tried to step back, but the little boy who had first helped him grabbed his hand. "Don't run," the boy said happily. "This is for you." Daniel felt confused. The mayor stepped onto the small stage and cleared his throat. "Today," he began, "we are here to thank someone special." The crowd became quiet. A young boy reminded this town what kindness looks like. He showed us that one person can make a big change. Daniel felt his cheeks become warm. "Daniel," the mayor said loudly, "please come forward." The crowd began clapping. Daniel walked slowly toward the stage. His hands were shaking. He had never stood in front of so many people before. The mayor smiled at him. "You did not ask for money," the mayor continued. "You did not ask for praise. You simply worked. You built something for everyone." Daniel looked at the ground, feeling shy. The mayor then held up a small golden plaque. "For leadership, kindness, and courage," he read. The crowd clapped even louder. But that was not the biggest surprise. The mayor raised his hand, asking for silence again. "This park will now officially be called Daniel's Park." At first, only a few people noticed the changes in the park. A painted swing, a clean bench, less trash on the ground. But slowly, something strange began to happen. The park was no longer silent. One afternoon, while Daniel was fixing a wooden fence near the entrance, he heard laughter behind him. Not the kind of laughter that hurts, the happy kind. He turned around and saw 3 small children running toward the blue swing. One of them was the little boy who had helped him before. "Daniel, look!" the boy shouted. "More people are coming." Daniel looked toward the road. 2 mothers were walking toward the park with their children. They stopped at the entrance and looked around carefully, as if they were not sure this was the same place. "Is this the old park?" one of the mothers asked. "It looks different," the other replied. Daniel felt nervous. He did not know what they would say. The mothers slowly walked inside. The children ran ahead and started playing. After a few minutes, one of the mothers walked toward Daniel. "Did you fix this place?" she asked. Daniel wiped his hands on his shirt and nodded. "Yes," he said quietly. "Why?" she asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "Because everyone needs a place to smile," he answered. The woman looked at him with surprise. She did not expect such a simple answer. That day, more people came. Not many, but enough to make the park feel alive. The next morning, something even more surprising happened. When Daniel arrived, he saw 2 men standing near the broken slide. They were holding tools. "Are you the boy fixing this park?" one of them asked. Daniel felt shy but nodded. "We heard about you," the man said. "We work at the repair shop. We have some extra wood and paint. You can use them." Daniel's heart beat faster. "Really?" he asked. "Yes," the other man smiled. "But you have to show us what to do." For the first time, Daniel was not working alone. They fixed the slide together. They added fresh paint. They tightened loose screws. Children stood nearby, watching with wide eyes. It was no longer just Daniel's project. It was becoming the town's project. But not everyone was happy. Some people still laughed. "He is just trying to get attention," one man said at a tea shop. "It will not last," another replied. Daniel heard some of these words. They hurt, but not like before. Now he had something stronger inside him. Hope. One evening, something unexpected happened. Ryan's father drove past the park in his expensive car. He slowed down when he saw many children playing there. He looked confused. "This place was empty before," he said to himself. He saw Daniel helping a small girl climb the slide. Ryan's father did not say anything, but he watched carefully. The next day, the park was more crowded than ever. Someone had brought flowers and planted them near the entrance. Someone else had painted a colorful sign that said, "Welcome everyone." Daniel stared at the sign for a long time. He did not know who painted it, but he felt proud. The same town that once ignored the park was now gathering there every evening. Children played freely. Parents talked peacefully. Laughter filled the air. The broken place had become a happy place. One afternoon, The elderly woman who had helped Daniel sat beside him. "You see what you started?" she said gently. Daniel looked around. He saw children who once laughed at him now playing beside him. He saw adults smiling at him with respect. "I only fixed a few things," Daniel said softly. "No," the woman replied. "You fixed something bigger." Daniel did not fully understand her words, but he felt them. The rejection at the birthday party had once made him feel small. Now, standing in the middle of the park, he felt tall. Not because of money, not because of a big house, but because he had given something to others. And then, something happened that made the whole town even more curious. A local newspaper reporter came to the park. She had heard the story. She took pictures of the blue swing. She wrote notes while watching Daniel help younger children. "What made you start this?" she asked him. Daniel looked at the ground for a second. Then he answered honestly. "I was not invited somewhere," he said calmly. "So I made a place where everyone is invited." The reporter froze for a moment. That sentence was powerful. The next day, the story appeared in the newspaper. The boy who rebuilt the park. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Daniel. The same people who once ignored him now spoke his name with respect. The town was watching, and they were starting to understand. But Daniel did not know that something even bigger was about to happen, because someone else had read that newspaper too, and that someone was feeling something heavy inside his heart. The story was not over. In fact, it was just getting more powerful. The next morning, Daniel woke up before the sun rose. The sky was still light gray, and the town was quiet. Most people were still asleep. But Daniel was already sitting on his bed, thinking about the park. His hands were sore from working the day before. His back hurt a little, but he did not complain. Instead, he smiled. He quickly washed his face and ate a small piece of bread for breakfast. His mother looked at him with concern. "You are going again?" she asked gently. "Yes," Daniel replied. "I am not finished." His mother did not stop him. She only handed him a small bottle of water. "Do your best," she said softly. Daniel walked toward the park with his toolbox in one hand and a small bag in the other. Inside the bag were old paint cans he had found near a repair shop. The shop owner had allowed him to take the leftover paint for free. When Daniel reached the park, he stood in the middle again and looked around. It was still broken, but now it looked possible. He decided to start with the swings. The metal chains were rusty and rough. He touched them carefully. He knew he could not buy new ones, but maybe he could clean them. He found an old piece of sandpaper in his toolbox and began rubbing the rust slowly. It was hard work. The sun began rising higher in the sky. Sweat ran down his face. His hands became red from the rough metal. After an hour, the chains started to look slightly better. Not perfect, but better. While he was working, two boys passed by on their way to the market. They stopped and stared at him. "Why are you wasting your time?" one boy asked. "This place is useless," said the other. Daniel did not stop. "It will not be useless anymore," he answered calmly. The boys laughed and walked away. Daniel felt a small sting in his chest, but he ignored it. He continued working. After cleaning the chains, he opened one of the paint cans. It was bright blue, not enough to paint the whole park, but enough to make a change. He dipped an old brush into the paint and began painting the swing seat. The color looked fresh and alive against the old metal. For the first time in years, something in the park looked happy. Around noon, an elderly woman came to sit on the bench Daniel had fixed the day before. She watched him quietly. After a few minutes, she called out, "Young boy, why are you doing this alone?" Daniel paused and looked at her. "Because no one else will," he said simply. The woman looked around the park. She looked at the blue swing. "You remind me of someone," she said softly. "My husband used to care about this place." Daniel smiled shyly and returned to painting. The woman stayed there longer than usual. Before leaving, she said, "I will bring you something tomorrow." Daniel did not know what she meant, but he nodded politely. By evening, one swing was painted blue, and another bench had been repaired. The park was still quiet, but it no longer felt forgotten. The next day, when Daniel arrived, he saw something surprising. The elderly woman was already there. She was holding a small box. "I brought you nails and a small brush," she said kindly. "It is not much, but maybe it will help." Daniel's eyes widened. "Thank you," he said with real gratitude. That small help gave him new energy. He worked even harder that day. And then something unexpected happened. A little boy from the neighborhood came running into the park. He stopped when he saw the blue swing. "Did you do this?" the boy asked. "Yes," Daniel replied. "Can I help?" the boy asked. Daniel looked at him for a moment. No one had ever asked him that before. "Yes," Daniel said with a smile. The little boy began picking up trash from the ground. Soon another child joined, and then another. They were not invited to any big party. They were just children who wanted a place to play. By the end of the week, the park looked different. Still not perfect, but alive. People walking by began to notice. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Some smiled, and some began whispering. "Who is fixing the park? The poor boy from Oak Street. The one who was not at the birthday party?" Slowly, the story began spreading across town. Daniel did not know that people were talking about him. He only knew one thing. Every time he fixed something, his heart felt lighter. Every time he painted a bench, his pain felt smaller. The rejection at the gate had hurt him deeply. But now that pain was turning into power. He was building something bigger than a party. He was building a place where everyone was welcome. And this idea, this simple, quiet idea, was something no one saw coming. Very soon, the whole town would begin to understand. And when they did, they would never forget the name Daniel. Daniel walked slowly down Maple Street. The music from the party was still playing behind him, but with every step, the sound became softer. Soon all he could hear was the wind. The road felt longer than usual. The bright afternoon no longer looked happy. Even the sun felt too strong on his face. In his hand, he still held the small gift wrapped in newspaper. The corner of the paper had become wet from his tears, though he did not even remember crying. He passed a group of children riding bicycles. They were laughing loudly. One of them looked at him and said, "Why aren't you at the party?" Daniel forced a small smile. "I have something else to do," he replied quietly. The children did not understand. They rode away, still laughing. Daniel kept walking. When he reached his small house, he stopped at the door for a moment. He did not want his mother to see his face like this. He took a deep breath and entered. His mother was still sitting near the window, sewing clothes carefully. The old sewing machine made a soft ticking sound. She looked up at him. She did not need to ask anything. She saw the gift still in his hand. She saw the sadness in his eyes. "They didn't let you in?" she asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "They said it was only for friends," he answered. His mother's hands stopped moving for a moment. Pain filled her eyes, but she did not show anger. She only stood up and walked toward him. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "You are worth more than any party," she said quietly. Daniel nodded, but inside he still felt small. He walked into his room and sat on his bed. The room was simple. A small wooden table, a chair, a narrow window, a shelf with a few old books. He placed the gift on the table and stared at it. For a moment, he imagined what it would have been like inside that big house. The cake, the games, the laughter. Then he shook his head. Slowly, a different thought entered his mind. He remembered something. He remembered the old park at the end of town. It used to be full of children years ago, but now it was broken and empty. The swings were rusty. The paint was gone. The grass was dry. No one cared about it anymore. Daniel stood up suddenly. His mother looked at him from the doorway. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Daniel's eyes looked different now. "I don't need their party," he said softly. "I will make my own place." His mother did not fully understand, but she saw something strong in his face. That night, while the town slept, Daniel sat at his small wooden table with a notebook. He opened a blank page. At the top, he wrote in careful letters, "Plan." He began drawing simple sketches of the old park. He drew the broken swing, the damaged bench, the empty ground. Then he started writing ideas. Clean the trash, fix one bench, paint the swing, plant small flowers. He did not have money. He did not have help. But he had time, and he had heart. The next morning, before the sun fully rose, Daniel quietly left the house carrying an old toolbox. It was small and rusty, but inside were a hammer, nails, and a screwdriver. When he reached the park, it looked worse than he remembered. Empty bottles were on the ground. Leaves covered the benches. The swing chains were brown with rust. Daniel stood in the middle of the park and looked around. For a moment, doubt entered his mind. "What am I doing?" he whispered. Then he remembered the closed gate. He remembered the laughter. He remembered the words, "You're not invited." His hands tightened around the hammer. "I will build something better," he said quietly. He started picking up trash first, one piece at a time. An old man walking his dog passed by and looked at him. "Why are you cleaning this place?" the man asked. Daniel did not stop working. "Because someone has to," he answered politely. The old man shook his head and continued walking. Daniel worked for hours. Sweat covered his forehead. His hands became dirty, but slowly the ground began to look cleaner. By afternoon, he fixed one broken wooden plank on a bench. It was not perfect, but it was something. When he finally sat down to rest, he looked around the park. It was still broken, but it did not look forgotten anymore. As the sun began to set, a small girl walked by with her mother. She stopped and looked at the cleaned bench. "Mom, can we sit here?" she asked. Her mother looked surprised. "I thought this place was ruined," she said. They sat on the bench Daniel had fixed. The little girl smiled. Daniel watched quietly from a distance. A small smile appeared on his face too. For the first time since the birthday party, his heart did not feel heavy. He realized something important. They closed a gate for him, but they opened something inside him. And this was only the beginning. The town still did not know what Daniel was doing. They did not know that one rejected boy was about tea. The sun was shining brightly over the small town. It was Saturday afternoon, and the streets were full of excitement. Colorful balloons were tied to fences. Cars were parked outside one large house at the end of Maple Street. Music was playing loudly, and children were laughing happily. Today was Ryan's birthday. Ryan was one of the richest boys in town. His father owned many shops. His house was big and beautiful, with a tall white gate and a large garden. For weeks, children at school had been talking about this party. They said there would be a big chocolate cake, a magician, games, and gift bags full of toys. Every child in class had received a shiny printed invitation card. Almost every child. A few streets away, in a small old house, lived a boy named Daniel. Daniel was not rich. His clothes were always clean but old. His shoes were a little torn from the sides. His school bag had been used for many years. But Daniel had something special. He had a kind heart. At school, Daniel had heard everyone talking about the party. He waited every day, hoping someone would give him an invitation too. He tried to act normal, but deep inside he wished he could go. But no invitation ever came. At first, Daniel told himself it was a mistake. Maybe Ryan forgot. Maybe the card was lost. On Saturday afternoon, Daniel sat on his bed holding a small piece of paper. It was not a fancy card. It was something he made himself. He had drawn balloons with colored pencils. He had written, "Happy Birthday, Ryan," in careful handwriting. He had even wrapped a small gift in newspaper. It was a simple toy car he had saved money to buy. Daniel looked at his mother, who was sewing clothes near the window. "Can I go for a while?" he asked softly. His mother looked at him. She knew about the party. She also knew he was not invited. But she saw hope in his eyes. "Be careful," she said gently. Daniel walked slowly toward Maple Street. The closer he got, the louder the music became. He could smell sweet cake in the air. He could hear children shouting with joy. When he reached the big white gate, he stopped. Inside, everything looked magical. Balloons floated in the garden. A table full of snacks stood near the pool. Children were running everywhere, wearing bright clothes. Daniel held his handmade card tightly. He took a deep breath and walked toward the gate. 2 boys from his class were standing near the entrance. They saw him coming. One of them looked surprised. The other started whispering. "What is he doing here?" one boy said quietly. Daniel tried to smile. "Hi," he said softly. "I came for the party." The boys looked at each other and then started laughing. "You didn't get an invitation," one of them said. Daniel's smile slowly faded. "Maybe it was a mistake," Daniel said. "I brought a card for Ryan." Before he could say more, Ryan himself walked toward the gate. He was wearing expensive clothes and holding a slice of cake. He looked at Daniel for a few seconds. The music was loud. Children were playing. But at that moment, everything felt silent to Daniel. Ryan spoke coldly. "You're not invited," he said. "This party is only for my friends." The words hit Daniel like a heavy stone. The boys near the gate laughed again. "Go home," someone said. Daniel felt his face becoming warm. His hands started shaking slightly. He looked down at the small gift wrapped in newspaper. Suddenly, it looked silly compared to the big colorful gifts on the table inside. For a moment, his eyes filled with tears. But he did not cry. He stood there quietly, feeling smaller than ever before. The gate slowly closed. The music continued. The laughter continued. The party continued. But Daniel's heart felt broken. He turned around and started walking away. Each step felt heavy. He could still hear the music behind him. He could still smell the sweet cake. But now everything felt far away. As he walked down the street, something changed inside him. First, he felt pain, then embarrassment, then anger. But after a few minutes, a different feeling came, a quiet determination. He stopped walking for a moment and looked back at the house one last time. He wiped his eyes. "They don't want me there," he whispered to himself. "That's okay." His voice was calm now. He looked at the small gift in his hand. Then slowly he began walking home. But this time his steps were not heavy. They were steady. No one at that party knew what was happening inside Daniel's heart. No one knew that this rejection would become the beginning of something powerful. And no one knew that the boy they turned away at the gate would soon do something that would shock the entire town.